If you are the kind of person who feels like you can only get what you want by working really hard for it, or that you have to constantly hustle your ass off, or you wear working hard as a badge of honor, but it comes at the expense of your own happiness, your health, or life as a whole, then this podcast episode is going to be for you. Because on today's episode of That's So Rich, we're going to be talking about overcoming the hustle mentality. Because if there's anything that I have learned in redefining wealth on my own terms and manifesting a rich life that I love so deeply, it's that hustling is never the answer. What's up, and welcome to the That's So Rich podcast, the show that's redefining wealth and helping you manifest a life that is rich in every single way. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, transformation coach, manifestation expert, and spiritual guide. And together, we're going to create your happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest life. I'm so happy you're here. Let's do this thing. What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of That's So Rich. I am currently recording this podcast episode from my childhood bedroom, and it's so funny, one, coming back to my hometown in general as this version of myself, but two, coming back and actually working out of my childhood bedroom. Because if there's anything that has been true for me throughout my life, is that ever since I was a little girl, I knew that I was made for big things. I knew that I was made for a life of more money, more abundance, more freedom, more just dreams and creation than what was available to me in my small town. And coming back to my childhood bedroom, it's so crazy because, of course, from like ages, I think we moved into this house when I was 3 years old. So, literally from 3 years old until I moved out when I was 18. So, 15 years of my life, I lived in this bedroom. And there were so many years of that when I was still like kid that I was like, yep, of course, my dreams are going to be a reality. But then in my teenage years, I was so depressed. And this room became a very, very dark place for me. And it's only been since moving away and getting to come back to visit my parents and spend time with my family that I've got to reclaim this space and see it as just this beautiful portal of hope and opportunity and growth for myself. And the craziest thing is coming back and recognizing that it's like that little girl who knew that she was made for more. She was right. And to run my multiple six-figure company from my childhood bedroom is just the funniest thing ever. And then, like, literally walk out into the living room and see my dad sitting in his armchair and my mom running around the house. And I'm like, wow, if only that little girl knew. And I know she does now. I know she lives on within me, but also if only high school version of me or all of these past versions of me that either were living in this room or were outside of this room that didn't feel as though this life was going to be possible. She knew that we'd be coming back and be the happiest, healthiest, wealthiest version of myself that I've ever been. I think it would have done her a world of good. But regardless, we're here today, and I'm so excited to be bringing you this podcast episode from my childhood bedroom because I feel like it's very fitting, especially coming back and seeing just how deeply ingrained the hustle mentality was in my hometown. I come from a very small agriculture town in Colorado, as well as my parents. They've worked hard their entire lives. My dad comes home from work every single day and he is physically depleted. My mom comes home from work every single day and she is physically depleted and then continues on to take care of the house, make dinner, do all of these things. And then she finally sits down at the end of the day and she's exhausted. And for me, there were so many years of my life where I thought hustle was the only way. If I wanted a bigger, better life than the one that I witnessed here and the one that I thought was going to be available to me, I thought I was going to have to work my ass off to make it a reality. And while there have been components of hard work, I don't want to equate hard work to bad because I think that there is this very toxic narrative that runs around on social media, specifically Instagram, when I think about this, that equates hard work to it being bad, it being wrong, it being negative. And I don't necessarily think quote unquote hard work is a bad thing. I think if you believe that hard work is the only way that you can get what you want, or you're addicted to the hustle, you're addicted to constantly feeling as though you need to achieve greater, higher results, and it's coming from a place of internalized lack, then that's where quote unquote hard work isn't necessarily the greatest thing. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's podcast episode. But I think it's important for everybody to be able to develop some sort of work ethic, to be able to develop a work ethic that allows them to help them get the result that they want. But the world has done a really bad job in teaching us that it has to look one specific way, which is hustling, working really hard, tons of hours, as much effort as possible. And like I said in the intro of today's podcast episode, the only thing that I have learned from hustle is that it's not the solution. Because eventually hustling is going to lead you into burnout. And if you're wanting a bigger, better, more abundant life, burning yourself out is not the solution to get there. And I think for anybody who's listening to this podcast episode who resonates with the fact that they've had to work their ass off, or they feel like they've always had to hustle for what it is that they want, or they believe that the only way that having a greater life is through working as hard as you possibly can, that you can look back to your roots, you can look back to your childhood, you can look back to the community that you were raised in, the parents that you had, or the primary caregivers, the environment that you were around, and see that that was what was shoved down your throat. That hard work was the only way that you could get what you want. And one of the most beautiful things about being able to reclaim wealth on your own terms, to choose your own life, your own story, and manifest a better life for yourself moving forward is the fact that you're the one who actually gets to decide that. And it isn't until we make that conscious connection, we make that conscious realization of the fact that, oh, this was never my story in the first place. I was told from somebody else. I was told from my dad. I was told from my mom. I was told from my teachers or my first boss or society as a whole. If you listen to the news or media, that hustling was the only way to get there. Oh, that was somebody else's story. Okay. And now I'm putting my foot down and I'm doing the intentional work to change the relationship that I have to my past, my beliefs, my nervous system, my internalized state, and to reclaim what is true for me from this point moving forward, because I know for myself, hustling is not the solution. And like I said, specifically on today's podcast episode, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about outgrowing the beliefs and the embodiment that hustling is the solution so that you can overcome that hustle mentality and hustle culture as a whole. So, with that being said, I am a firm believer that hustling comes from the energy of lack. Now, let me break this down for you really quick. I believe that hustling comes from the energy of lack because the belief that you need to work your ass off in order for you to get what you want is coming from a disbelief in the fact that it's possible in any other way. It's coming from some sort of fear, some sort of doubt that without that hustle, without the grind, without the hours, without the insane amount of effort, without compromising or minimizing your pleasure or your joy in some sort of capacity, then you're not going to get what you want. And that is the energy of lack. That is the energy of fear. That is the energy of you can't have what you want unless you sacrifice yourself in some sort of way. And I don't know about you guys, but to me, that sounds like the most ineffective way that you could actually get what you want. If you're constantly depleting yourself, depleting yourself, depleting yourself, and expecting for you to have more of what you want, that sounds really counterintuitive. The way that I like to think about this and the visualization that's coming into my head right now is the kind of like cliche or like saying of when your cup is empty, you can't pour from an empty cup. And when you are in hustle mode or you are so immersed in hustle culture, it's essentially like you are maybe starting with that cup full every single day. But as you're going through the day and you're just experiencing life, that takes about 50% of the cup. And then you're hustling, you're grinding, you're sacrificing, you're doing things that perhaps you don't feel actually intuitively aligned with. And that leaves your cup empty. And majority of us, when our cups are empty, the initial reaction to it is then not to go fill our cups back up with all of the joy, all of the fun, all of the pleasure, all of the things that you're wanting. It's to numb out in some sort of capacity. It's to, what do people call it? Rotting. It's to lay around and rot all day. It's to scroll on your phone, endlessly look at all of the notifications, all of the videos on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all the freaking platforms out there. It's to do things that don't necessarily make you feel like the happiest, healthiest, and best version of yourself. It's to try and satiate the most primal part of yourself, which is just the fact that, like, your brain wants dopamine, your brain wants to feel good. So it's going to try to do that in the easiest way possible, which then puts you into this cycle where the next day your cup isn't fully full, but you're hustling, you're grinding. You have less than what you had the day before to pour out of that cup, and you're not actually putting the most potent energy that you possibly could into whatever it is that you're working towards, whether that be a career or a house, a home, a family, making more money, whatever the dream is for you, or whatever it is that you're trying to make a part of your reality right now. It's the most inefficient way to get there. And again, our society tells us it's the most efficient way. It's the only way that you can have your dreams. And I'm calling bullshit, because if that was the reality, everybody would have their dream life. All of these hustlers, all of these people out here working their fucking asses off, grinding away at jobs that they absolutely despise. Everybody would have their dream life if hustling was the solution. But hustling's not the solution. And that's why people find themselves in these states of burnout, why they find themselves in career paths or relationships or situations that they never wanted to be in the first place, and that were never aligned with their heart, never aligned with their souls, because that's the path that they thought they had to walk in order for them to get what it was that they wanted out of life. And perhaps then eventually have a few good years in retirement to then, quote unquote, do the things that you want to do. But I think if anything, and I feel really grateful for the fact that I was born like the cutoff year of millennials. I'm 1996. I'm like cutoff year of millennials, right? First year of Gen Z. I think that these younger generations are recognizing that this narrative, this way of being, this way of living that has been handed down to us from prior generations, it doesn't work anymore. And that's not to shit on other generations. That's just to say that, like, that's the information they were given. And that's what, essentially, without technology and all of these advancements that we've had happen in the world, they almost had to mold themselves into. But we are so fortunate in the world now, regardless of what age you are, regardless of what generation you are, regardless of when you're listening to this, you now have the tools available to you at all times to no longer have to hustle in the way that generations in the past used to have to. But it starts with your internal state. And again, that's why we're here on this podcast. So, my first invitation to you on this podcast episode is to check yourself. If you find yourself constantly hustling, constantly grinding, constantly working, constantly moving, not giving yourself time to replenish, reset, enjoy yourself, and indulge in the things that you really enjoy in life, what is the belief that is running that? What experience did you have from the past, or what did you learn that has put you into the position of hustling, and recognizing that that's most likely coming from a place of fear inside of yourself? It's coming from some internalized fear, subconscious fear, unconscious fear, or maybe even conscious fear that is running the show that puts you in that position of hustle. For example, a few of these different ones could be that you have a fear of losing control. You have a fear of losing control. You don't have full faith and trust in yourself or in others or the universe, God, source, spirit, whatever you believe in as a higher power. And because of that, you work your ass off. Another example of that could be that you didn't see the support that you wanted to see growing up. And because you were not supported in the way that you wanted to be supported growing up, you've taken it upon yourself. Almost like this belief I hear from women all the time is, if I don't do it, nobody else will. Or in my example, my belief growing up and why I hustled so long for so many years was, one, seeing how hard it was for my family to live paycheck to paycheck and wanting a different and a greater life for myself. And then the second reason is because I was so deeply insecure within myself that I thought the only way that I could be seen or loved or appreciated was if I built, quote unquote, success for myself, external success. And I talked about this a lot on the last podcast episode. And so I hustled my ass off to build that external success in hopes of finally being seen, finally being loved, finally being validated in the way that I wanted to be validated, only to realize and recognize that it was never going to be those external things that actually brought me the level of love and fulfillment and freedom and safety that I thought it was going to. And that's where, honestly, for me, this journey of stepping away from hustle and overcoming the hustle culture and mentality and stepping into this place of deep alignment and acting from inspiration and intuition and like intrinsic motivation came from in the first place. Which is then the perfect segue into what is the alternative to hustle then? Because that's one of the biggest things that I hear from the women that I work with that we do this deep work surrounding is okay, if hustling is not the solution, if hustling is coming from this place of fear or doubt or ego or a lack of trust inside of myself, then what is the solution to releasing hustle culture or releasing that need to hustle inside of myself? What is the way that I can overcome the belief that I don't have to work so damn hard for every single thing that I have? And I have three answers to this because I don't think it's necessarily one thing. I think it's a component of a few different things. And this is what I've seen for myself and hundreds of women that I've worked with. And almost all of those women being entrepreneurs in some sort of capacity or being business women who are wanting to transition either from their career into their own thing or transition from whatever career into something that aligns with them so much more, or super high achieving women that have manifested every single thing that they want to externally but still feel this deep lack inside of themselves and still feel like it's not enough. It comes down to three things. First one is learning how to create a deep sense of safety inside of yourself. And what I mean by that is creating internal safety as opposed to depending on the world for your safety. The world likes to teach us this very ass backwards way of looking at things that in order for you to feel safe or secure, you need the job, the money, the house, the car, the partner, all of these external things. But the reality of those external things is that one, they don't bring you the level of fulfillment that you think they're going to because they themselves are neutral resources. And two, those external things can be taken away from you at any point when or if those external things are taken away from you, it then strips you from that sense of safety. And again, this is how the world teaches us to form a sense of safety inside of ourselves is look at all of these external things and achieve these external things. And when you achieve those external things, that's when you can feel good enough about yourself. That's when you don't have to hustle anymore. That's when you don't have to XYZ, whatever it may be. But the reality is most people who are on that path of, okay, let me get all of these things so I can feel safe and secure and aren't addressing the internal lack of safety that is happening, they get those things and then it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. They continue on that path of, okay, what else? What else? What else? What else? Almost like this toxic achievement cycle. But the reality is, those external things are never going to feel like they're enough until you learn to create a deep sense of safety inside of yourself. The way to overcome hustle is by learning to create deep safety inside of yourself, which then leads us into the second thing. Because the second thing really ties into being able to create that deep sense of safety inside of yourself, but it's identifying where you're disconnected from yourself, where you're disconnected from your heart, where you're disconnected from your soul, where you're disconnected from what it is that you truly want out of life and why you're here in the first place. And let me break this down for a moment. So, one of the things that I see with this so often is that people don't necessarily want to be hustling, but they're hustling because it's almost like they think once they hit some sort of milestone, whether that be an income goal or a house or a car, whatever it may be, that that's when they finally have permission to enjoy their life. That's when they finally have permission to, okay, maybe then I'll look at my heart's desires. Maybe then I'll think about what it is that I want to do. Maybe once XYZ happens, then I can have the thing that I want. And it's like, okay, again, very ass backwards way of looking at it because this is your one and only life. This is what you're here to do. Those things that you want, the desires that you have, the desires that have been placed on your heart, the things that maybe you think are a little too crazy to be a reality. That's why you're actually here. That's what you're meant to be doing. And you don't have to hustle to do those things. Those things are what your natural state of being, your natural way of knowing, your natural way of navigating the world is going to bring you to once you release the bullshit narratives from society, from your past, from your parents, from your teachers, from your primary caregivers, from all of these different sources and get to know yourself and get to trust yourself. So the way that I like to think about this is essentially like the mental, emotional, and energetic blockages that have been stopping you from fully owning your dreams and desires. When you start to navigate releasing those different things. So for me, it was the belief that I'm inherently flawed, that I'm not enough, that money is always going to be inconsistent or something that I have to struggle for, that I can't follow my heart and also make money and create the life that I want, and so many others. But being able to look into these different areas of my life and recognize that it's like, oh, okay, it's actually just the belief about those things that is holding me in a state of hustle. And the belief then triggering my nervous system and making me feel as though I can't move forward, and healing from those things from the root level. And when I say from the root level, I mean not only doing the subconscious reprogramming, but also releasing it somatically from the cellular level of your body. That's where you come to this place of being able to be intrinsically motivated. And this is something that I think is so cool and I feel really passionate about because I've seen it for myself. And then I've also seen it for so many of the women that I work with, is that by doing the inner work to release the different limiting beliefs or past experiences or traumas that you've experienced throughout your life, getting to the core of who you are, there's a period of time where the women that I've worked with on all of this feel really fearful that they're not going to be motivated to do the things that they want to do if they're not putting all of this pressure on themselves, or they're not hustling, or they're not abiding to the rules that they used to abide to get so much done. And on the other side of that fear and the tension and pressure that you experience as a byproduct of releasing the need to hustle, your intrinsic motivation is reignited. Your intrinsic desire to show up and do what it is that you want to do shows up. And that's something that I've experienced so clearly for myself. One of the coolest things that I've worked on with my life coach is back in 2021, right before I moved to New York City. I actually came back to my hometown then, right before I moved back, or before I moved to New York City. And that entire summer, the goal for me was to learn how to step out of hustle mode and learn to listen to this internal voice and really just choose to listen to the intrinsic motivation that was there for me, and stopping myself and slowing myself down and listening to all the limiting beliefs that came up when I was no longer forcing myself or pressuring myself into doing things was so freaking loud. And I think that that's where, especially a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with experience a lot of resistance or frustration, or what caps them from actually making the kind of money that they can make without the amount of effort or hours that they think it's going to take them, is just overcoming the fear and resistance of what happens when you stop hustling. And so, all of that to say, I think first, like I said, is creating internal safety. And then second is learning, what are these limiting beliefs? What are these fears? What are these doubts that are running the show right now that are keeping you in the patterns of hustling, and learning how to release those and let those go so that you can finally access that intrinsic motivation and the intuition that comes along with that intrinsic motivation. Every single one of us already has the roadmap inside of ourselves to be able to create the lives that we desire and manifest every single thing that it is that we want. But for most people, they're blocked by the narratives, the fears, the doubts, the past experiences, the traumas that have been getting in the way of them actually following that roadmap that lives inside of themselves. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're like, fuck, Kat, I realize that this is me. Like, I am in hustle mode. I am in grind mode. This is something that I'm doing. I know that there is more available to me, but working harder isn't going to get me to where I want to be. It's almost like the saying that hit me so hard first time I ever talked to my life coach. He said, amazing, hustling, grinding, working so hard has gotten you to where you are right now, but what got you here isn't going to get you there. And for anybody who's watching the video, as I say there, I'm pointing up. Anybody who's not watching the video, I guess, I'm pointing up. It's like, what got me here to a really great place, but not fully where I want to be, isn't going to get me there, isn't going to get me to the next level, isn't going to get me to the highest point of expansion, because you can't hustle your ass off to the highest point of expansion. You will burn out before you ever get to the highest place of your expansion and what you're capable of if hustle is your mode to get there. And that's where this energetic work comes into place by actually clearing the limiting beliefs and the cellular memory of these things that have been holding you in hustle mode so that you can finally expand your nervous system and your wealth energetics to be able to call in more money, call in more experiences, more opportunities, more support, more of the things that you want without having to work so hard for it. If you're listening to this and you're like, Kat, that is me, I want to invite you to apply to my signature program, the Abundant AF Babe Academy, which has been specifically designed to help you identify what these different mental, emotional, and energetic blockages are that are holding you back from having, being, and doing every single thing that you want and not having to work so damn hard to get there. I have supported hundreds and hundreds of women through this program, and the coolest thing is that every single time I see them manifest far greater lives than they were before without half the effort that they were putting in before. That is the power of this work. And if you're already resonating with what I'm talking about in this podcast episode, this was made for you. So you can click the link down below in the show notes to apply to the Academy, or you can just shoot me a direct message over on Instagram if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I want to apply, but like I want to talk to Kat immediately. Just shoot me a message over on Instagram. You can also find the link to that down below in the show notes. And let's have a conversation, because if this resonates with you, then I can promise you the Abundant AF Babe Academy was made for you. But with that being said, very last thing and third thing that I was talking about with stepping out of hustle mode and finally getting to this place of being able to follow that internal roadmap and tap into your intrinsic motivation is healing your relationship with money. Let's be honest, the reason that most people are hustling is because they believe they have to hustle in order for them to make the money that they want to make in order to live the life that they want to have. And just like I said, the old outdated model that most of us are given is that you hustle your ass off and you save and you put things into retirement funds and so on and so forth till the day that you're able to retire. And then you have a few good years, maybe if you're lucky, to enjoy the rest of your life. If you ask me, that sounds like the absolute fucking worst way you could go about living your life. And apologies to anybody who has done that, because if it works for you, it works for you. But fuck, that would not work for me. I was saying to my parents yesterday, it's like, I already feel retired. Like, I already feel retired. I just get to do what I want to do on a day-to-day basis. I get to talk about this. I get to share my message. And the reason that I show up and do it is because I want all of you to feel like you're retired as well, to feel like you're just living your purpose, your passion, your best life on a day-to-day basis. Because I believe that the more people that are in this position, the greater this world gets to be. The more good, kind-hearted women in the world that have money in their pockets and aren't having to fucking beat themselves in the ground to make that money, the better the world gets to be. And so healing your relationship with money, not only your money mindset, but also actually reprogramming your nervous system and releasing the cellular memory of you having to work so damn hard, is what is necessary for you to step out of the hustle culture, hustle mentality, and step into a place of pure alignment in your life. And again, that's exactly what I help people with inside of the Abundant AF Babe Academy. And I also have so many podcast episodes about healing your relationship with money. So if you want to take a deep dive into those podcast episodes, you absolutely can. But if you get value from this podcast, this free podcast, I have had women reach out to me that have told me they have completely transformed their lives just from this podcast alone. Imagine what happens when you actually have my support on a week-to-week basis, when you actually get to have real conversations with me and we get to work through these things together. That's been hands down the most important thing. And I know I talk about this so much on these podcast episodes, the fact that I wouldn't be in this position where I am if I hadn't received support from coaches and mentors along the way, because we can only get ourselves so far. If you've been so used to hustling, if you've been so ingrained in this place of believing that you have to work hard for every single thing that you got, it's hard for you to break out of that on your own. Is that to say that you can't break out of it on your own? Absolutely not. You can. But this is your one and only life. And the thing that I like to think about is that what we do on our own is always going to take us longer than what it is when we have the support of somebody who has helped us or who can help us get to that place so much quicker. And the most valuable resource that you actually have is your time. It's the only one that you can't get back. And so, why waste any more of your time trying to figure this all out on your own when you have a guide that wants to help you get there? And I think that that's why most people don't take this intrinsically motivated path because it's challenging to access that part of yourself when it's never been shown to you before, when it's never been uncovered to you before, when you've never been given the support to get to that place. And that doesn't have to be the reality for you. You can learn how to create that deep internal safety inside of yourself. Release these things from the past that have been holding you in the position that you're in right now and really heal that relationship with money. Because once you do, and you're tapped into that intrinsic motivation, you're tapped into your intuition, you're tapped into the reason that you are here in the first place and the passion that you have for life. Let's go back to that cup analogy. Then your cup is full every single freaking day. And you start pouring from your cup, or honestly, you don't even have to pour from your cup because your cup is overflowing. Overflowing. One of the conversations that I was having with my clients last week was the fact that so many people, when they're focusing on getting out of debt or hitting the income goals that they want to hit or whatever it may be, they focus in on what it is that they don't want. They don't want the debt. They don't want to not hit those income goals. They don't want to have to work so hard. But that focusing in on it is what continues to drain the cup versus when you release all of those things that are putting you into this place of hustle and you're experiencing just the abundance, the incredible overflow that wants to come into your life, then that overflow is the solution to it. Overflow is the solution to debt. Overflow is the solution to you hitting your income goals. Overflow is the solution to you making the impact that you want to make. Overflow is the solution to you being able to show up with the love that you want to show up with in the world. It all comes from overflow. And that overflow is what you access when you are connected to your intuition, you're connected to your intrinsic motivation, you're connected to yourself at your core. That is the solution to breaking free of hustle culture, to finally being and doing every single thing that you want without having to work so damn hard for it. I was telling this to somebody last week. I only work like 20 hours a week now. Maybe. That's like on a week that I'm like putting in the work. I'm working 20 hours. I used to work 60 hours a week. So on my busiest week, only doing a third of what I used to do on my average week, I don't have the actual like number available right now, how many times more, but like 100 times more than 100 times more, like 200 times more than what I used to make in a year with a third of the effort. Again, y'all, that's what's available to you when you stop playing by the rules of the world. Stop playing by the narrative of you must work hard for what it is that you want, and you access your own internal guidance system, what you're here to do, why you're here in the first place, what it is that you want to create from that, following your heart, following your intrinsic motivation. It's available to every single one of you. If I can do it, you can do it too. And one last time, I will say, if this podcast episode speaks to you, this is your sign to join the Abundant AF Babe Academy. You can click the link down below in the show notes to apply, or you can send me a message over on Instagram and say, Kat, freaking get me inside of that academy ASAP. I only hold a few spots every single month in order to ensure everybody inside gets the highest level of support. But if you're listening to this, follow that inkling to reach out and let's make it a reality for you. And with that being said, that is all that I have for you on today's podcast episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm sending you all of my love, and I will chat with you on the next one.